Welcome, everybody, to the Armchair Racers podcast. We are back with episode number 20, I believe. Um, Took a week off, but we're back at it, and we got a lot to talk about because we're going to go back to not only this week, but the week before as well. Do cover that stuff the best we can and get ourselves caught up here. I'm your host, Kenny Kibbe, along with my co host, Austin Belke. And yeah, let's get right into it. A lot of real racing news to talk about. First, we'll bring up Martinsville from the Cup Series. Well, really, and Xfinity Series too. We'll go through that real quick. Do you have any reaction or anything to the Xfinity race?
Oh man, that was awesome. I didn't watch the whole race, but I did watch probably the last like 20 or 30 laps. So it's cool to see Josh Berry leading, and I was really just hoping there wasn't going to be a caution. And sure enough, there wasn't. It was awesome to see him pull away and get the victory. I mean, what a huge deal
Hold
for
on.
him.
Good.
I'll say everything again.
Yep.
Okay. Um, I didn't watch the whole race. I tuned into it late. I forget what I was doing, but I was doing something. And I turned it on and I saw Josh Berry out front by a couple seconds, and I was praying that there wouldn't be a caution for him. And there wasn't, thankfully. So he got his first one in the Xfinity Series. What a huge deal for him. I mean, that's huge. I mean, he's a short track racer driving late models. Had a couple starts before, but he's on a limited schedule this year. And to go out there and win at Martinsville, that's awesome. So happy for him. It's a huge deal. Really proud of him.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to see him get a victory and have that 8 car have some success. That 8 car's been kind of struggling since being kind of a part-time kind of all-star kind of car. But yeah, going that race obviously started at night, and then we had rain, and that had to be run. What was it, Sunday afternoon? Both Martinsville races turned out to be basically day races instead of being night races like originally planned. And yeah, I mean the majority of the cars in the Martinsville race for Xfinity they finished. If you guys got into some dust ups, there was actually I think it was Joe Graff Jr. Was it Joe Graff? I think Gray Galding was involved. There was a scuffle afterwards between two kind of lesser known drivers because they got together during the race. Um, One thing of note, George Gorham Jr. in the 90 car, that was his first ever Xfinity race, getting P18. I thought that was a pretty good run for him. Um, Top 10 is, Ty Gibbs was fast again. He got P4. I was actually thinking maybe he was going to pull off another victory for a little while there, but I think he just wore his stuff out too much, and Josh Berry did a great job of managing his stuff, getting through the traffic, and winning. Noah Gragson was pretty close behind in second, but he couldn't get up to him. And I really wanted Josh Berry to win too, so that's really cool for him. Hopefully that opens up some more opportunities for him. And anyways, then we move on to the Cup race at Martinsville.
Boy, what a strange race. A lot of comers and goers, people at the front and then not at the front. The pile up on the backstretch was huge. Um, just a crazy race.
Yeah, so that race was interesting. Obviously, it was won by Martin Truex Jr. And yeah, that race was odd. Um, Chase Elliott ended up P2 in that race. Denny Hamlin again dominant, and we still have one more race from the past to talk about for the Cup guys, and story's the same. Denny Hamlin dominant, but doesn't win. P3 in this one. The Hendrick guys did a really nice job. Chase Elliott second, William Byron fourth, Kyle Larson fifth. Tyler Reddick with a top 10 and eighth. Christopher Bell also, he got seventh. It was a good run for him. There's actually more cars who didn't finish the Cup race than the Xfinity race. Lately, it's been Cup races have been pretty accident filled. Saw Daniel Suarez's car catch fire. Brad Keselowski was involved in that big wreck. Alex Bowman was in there too, and that was a pretty terrible start to Bowman's season. Luckily, in the next race, things kind of turned around for him. Um, but yeah, all of a sudden, like Truex was never really good at short tracks, and now all of a sudden, it was like what 3 of the last 4 short tracks or something like that he had won. And he's kind of been the short track ace all of a sudden. I don't know where it's coming from. It's like all of a sudden in Truex's career, he's slowly become a master at the tracks that he's historically not very good at.
Yeah, pretty weird to see him just become a short track ace. But I can only assume it's more time on the simulator and I mean possibly different equipment too, because JGR obviously has a great short track program. Kyle Busch is usually fast on those. Denny Hamlin's pretty quick. So it's not too surprising to see that the 19 car be fast, but when you look at just how dominant Martin Truex Jr. has been recently, um, yeah, it's pretty puzzling.
Then we go on to the next week with the trucks, and this one again was dominated by KBM, Kyle Busch Motorsports, and John Hunter Nemechek came away with the victory. I did not watch this entire race, but the little bit that I did see was a mix of dominance by the KBM trucks and wrecks by everybody else. Um, Toyota's really seemed dominant in general in the series this year. I don't know. I'm thinking that part of it is like they have a lot of talent in their driver lineup with John Hunter Nemechek. Kyle Busch was in this race. I think Chandler Smith has a lot of potential. And then the Thor Sport drivers are pretty good and aggressive as well. And Stuart Friesen's also starting to settle in. A lot of the Chevy drivers are have a lot of inexperience, and I think the Nice trucks, for whatever reason, they had a great season with Ross Chastain in 2019, but have been not so great since then. And I thought Brett Moffitt was going to be really good, and he's had a mixture of bad luck and bad handling trucks. I mean, you can just see that he's been struggling, and he actually ended up 37th, going out of the race with handling issues. So I don't know what that really is, but um, a lot of cautions, but just very few drivers actually retired from the race. Almost 35 drivers stayed in the race. Another Nice truck in a blast. That was Ryan Truex with a rear gear issue right away. Um, one of the stories in this race was Norm Benning and Jennifer Jo Cobb getting into it, spinning each other out a couple times, and Norm ended up continuing, finishing 32nd, and Jennifer Jo Cobb 38th out of the race from the damaged vehicle policy. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, 4 wins in a row for KBM. Do you think the dominance will continue?
I think they'll continue to be the dominant team, but I don't think they'll keep winning. I don't think they'll win the next race, to be honest.
Yeah, the
Although they might. I mean, historically they've been good on the cookie cutter tracks. I'm pretty sure they're going to Kansas next. Do the trucks go to Kansas too?
I'm not sure. They might. No, they do at least once a year.
Right. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if they'll win for sure, but obviously they'll continue to be the best team by far.
Yeah, and Tyler Ankrum ended up third in that race, which was very surprising. He's had a terrible, terrible season so far, which was a little bit puzzling because he was when he ran for DGR Crosley his rookie season. I mean, he got a win, which was it was luck because a little bit because of fuel mileage, but he ran well all season long. And then the next year for GMS, I thought he was going to break out and get multiple wins. He didn't win, but he ran decent, and now he's been terrible. And the GMS group in total has been pretty awful, at least for their standards this year. It's surprising. Um, but Sam Mayer did end up ninth. That's a good run for him. I can't wait to see him come through the ranks. He's been successful in everything he's driven so far, and that's an exciting prospect if you're a fan of the Chevy camp.
Anyways, we'll move on to the Richmond Cup race recap. Like Kenny mentioned, um, dominance by Hamlin almost all race long. Hamlin had a couple guys up there challenging him for the lead. Joey Logano was fighting with him. Hamlin actually had to pass Joey a couple times. Truex was also kind of in the fight from time to time. We even saw last year's probably most dominant driver, Kevin Harvick, having a pretty decent run for how this year has gone. He's kind of flirting with the top 10. Unfortunate, he had that right rear tire failure going into turn one that pretty much ruined his race. But it did afford for an interesting fight to the finish.
Yeah, so like you said, Denny Hamlin dominant, led over half the laps. Martin Truex Jr. was the other dominant car, which, those two guys really seem to be the real players week in and week out right now, as those two guys and then everybody else. He led 107 laps, so
Didn't he win both stages too?
um, I think so. I think he did. Actually, I can find that out right here. Hamlin won stage one and stage two. They were both
Okay,
1-2 in both stages.
cool. All right.
um, but yeah, but then they had pit stops late in the race, or later in the race. Well, yeah, later in the race, I guess. And Martin Truex Jr. got a speeding penalty, I believe it was, and so he had to come back through the field, and it took forever for that to happen.
Well, so yeah, so let's go back to that in a bit more detail. They had green flag pit stops. So right, is that when he got caught speeding, or was that at the caution?
Well, it wasn't at the late caution, if that's what you're
No,
wondering.
no, it was not the last caution. I think it was during green flag pit stop. So basically, Truex and Hamlin were like 15 seconds ahead of everyone else behind them, and green flag pit stop started. So everyone went through and cycled, and Hamlin did a good job getting in and out. Good job on pit road. Nothing went wrong. Truex did almost the exact same thing, but then he sped exiting pit road, so he had to come by and do that pass-through penalty. And they came out, and Kenny, you actually saw it before anyone else did. You actually, excuse me, you actually saw Alex Bowman kind of going out and like matching Hamilton, sometimes even doing better or just a little bit worse than him, depending on traffic. And you made the comment like, if we get a caution, look out for Bowman because he's really quick right now.
Yeah, I mean the guys on the Fox broadcast also kind of noted of it, like, hey, Alex Bowman's running some
Well,
really good
but it
lap
was
times.
like during the caution is when I heard it. Like when we had that
Yeah, yeah.
caution, Clint Boyer made mention of it, which to his credit, he was right. But you did it like 50 laps before they did.
Yeah, so I just started, I watch throughout the field and see, who's making progress, who have I noticed make up some positions. And I noticed Bowman was the highest he's been all day long. And that was during that really long run. And I noticed that, the time intervals were coming down. He was still like 4 something seconds back, but the time intervals were coming down. So I felt like if there was a caution, it was going to be interesting. Now, I did not know that Bowman had said before that they had terrible, terrible short run speed. So I think they actually didn't even think they were going to have a chance. But kudos to what's his crew chief? It's not Greg Ives, right? Is it Greg Ives?
By the way, it is great,
Okay,
guys.
yeah. Kudos to him for making some aggressive short run changes and basically letting Bowman run like 12 qualifying laps and getting him out front. I mean, he was astronomically faster than the other guys, but you could tell they started to catch him there at the end, but it didn't matter at that point. So he had enough of a lead, and Bowman hit his marks. I was a little bit worried when he went to the inside of Denny Hamlin. He kind of like made a twitch maneuver to avoid hitting him, and I thought that was a little bit awkward, but he made
I
it
think it
stick.
was weird, and Denny was also taking a bit shallower of an entry than Bowman thought he was gonna, so he had to twitch to get down. But I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that was really cool to see Bowman win, and of course I have a shirt of his, but of course I got it when he was in the '88, so now that shirt's outdated. Uh, but
I've got about 4 or 5 of those.
yeah, and I also have a Jimmy Johnson '48, and that's outdated. Um, but cool to see him win. It's really surprising that three of the 400 cars have won, and the last one to win is Chase Elliott. But I think that's a
Not much. Chase really should have won at the Daytona Road Course. NASCAR dicked him over
yeah,
by throwing that caution for nothing.
yeah, and like it's a good problem to have though, because let's be honest, if we had to pick out of the 400 cars, who are we most confident that will get a win? It's
Oh,
Chase.
Chase by
So
far.
just
I mean,
because,
he's been holding their flag for the last 3 years.
right,
I mean, he's gotten like 11 wins in the last 3 years.
and just because he hasn't won yet, to us really doesn't mean anything. You know
He
what I mean?
hadn't won yet at this time last year, even with the amount of races we'd run, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. So like, and he's run pretty well. Like I will admit, like this Richmond
He's
run,
top
not
10 in
great.
points on like Winston Cup points for me.
Right.
I think he's top 10, so that's a good season so far.
I believe the highest in points though out of all of the Hendrick Camp is Byron though. What a surprise that that's been.
If it's
He's
not Byron, it's Larson.
yeah. Well, I think Larson's he's kind of cooled off just a little bit since his win at Vegas, and Byron's just top 10 every week. He was seventh again this past week. Bowman I
Yeah,
think was
although Kyle Larson, I'm not sure how good he is on short tracks, especially Martinsville. Richmond he won at, and I think 2017, maybe
yes, it was
2016.
17.
Um, but I mean Larson was the dominant car at Atlanta, so I feel like once maybe next week at Kansas he'll be dominant again, or at least up there with Byron.
But let's just make it clear, Byron and Bowman pretty good, but Chase Elliott was 12th, didn't wasn't a factor all day, and Larson was 18th and was really not a factor all day. Everybody's kind of all over the board on that.
Yeah, Chase Elliott was fighting a really ill-handling race car, and he had been up in the top 10 a couple different times, but he was mostly fighting his race car than he was racing, I would say.
Worth noting that Eric Almirola, P6, his first top 10 of the year. Um, he's always been good at Richmond. Matt DiBenedetto, P9, his first top 10 of the year. Both of them guys have had just awful, awful um, seasons so far. So good to see them get in the top 10. Austin Dillon eked out a top 10. He was actually kind of the car to beat when we came here last year. He was not so great this year, but was okay. Um, Ryan Blaney, historically average finish like 25th, I believe, at Richmond. He ends up P11. That was not too bad. Ross Chastain ended up 15th. Not bad considering how bad his season's been. Daniel Suarez, and P16, another solid, solid run for that new team. I keep comparing them to, the 2311 racing. I don't know where they are in points wise, but race to race, I keep comparing those two, and I also keep comparing 2311 to the
Or the
petty
Joy car.
the
Oh,
petty
yeah,
car.
right.
And those guys are consistently beating that 2311 racing car. So that's to me that's nice to see because I root for those two teams more, and um, they also have less money at their disposal. I guarantee it. So
Oh, for
um,
sure.
so that's good to see. It was Suarez was 16th, Jones was 19th, and Bubba Wallace was 26th. So, but now we will go ahead to the Talladega week. That's this week, and we did have the Xfinity race yesterday. However, it did get shortened by rain. It was it was like 20 some laps short of the full distance,
Schedule distance.
and the guys were pretty racy, but nobody was really stupid about it. Everybody seemed pretty darn mature about things, and there was a time where guys got up to the top lane and just kind of rode around for a while. And then we were just about to get to the point where it was going to be a wreck fest, I think, because they just had a wreck, like very late on. It was Brandon
The oh
Jones.
07 car lost a right rear tire or something, maybe left or right front.
I think it was right front. Yeah.
Came up and hit Brandon Jones, and then hit Ty Dillon, and he came down the track and hit somebody else. And
Yeah, Joey Gase got spun. Michael Annett got spun, but continued. So yeah, there was all that, and also to note, Josh Berry spun with a tire failure, but didn't hit anything at one point in the race. But
he was set to get the dash for cash.
yes, yes, he was. But anyways, we had that one of them cautions, and then the skies opened up and it started raining, and it started raining really hard. So Jeb Burton happened to be the leader, and he comes away with the win. So it was cool to see him win his first Xfinity win, first win in the second win ever in the top three NASCAR series, first since 2013 in the trucks at Texas. But Yeah, it was cool to see Jeb. He's Ward Burton's son, obviously, and he was really emotional. And that 10 car has not won. They never won with Ross Chastain, which is really surprising considering how consistent they were. Um, but they won. Another win for Colleague Racing. Allmendinger was third. Ryan Sieg got a top five and fifth. Noah Gragson got sixth, winning the Dash for Cash again, second week in a row. Brandon Brown with another top 10 in seventh. He's still solidly in the playoffs at the moment. Myatt Snyder with a ninth. Tommy Joe Martins with an 11th. I believe that ties his best ever finish. I don't think he's gotten a top 10. Timmy Hill with a 13th. Jeremy Clements with a 14th. And Jeremy Clements is still in the points right now as well. What was your reaction to the Xfinity race?
I mean, we we kind of watched some of it together over the Xbox party and just through the internet and stuff. So it was cool to see Jeb get a win. That was awesome. I wish Josh Berry would have gotten the Dash for Cash. I like him a lot more than I like Noah Gragson. I really dislike how Noah Gragson kind of carries himself, and that really showed yesterday during his post-race interview. But overall, it was a good race, yeah. So yeah, like you said, I mean, they were fighting for it, but they were all kind of like they were making moves that weren't like low percentage moves. So even though they were getting kind of aggressive and racing, they weren't doing it, too stupid.
Yeah, I think they were definitely set to have start a wreck fest after that. Like if they were going to get going again, especially with rain approaching, if it hadn't gotten there yet before we went green, it was going to get interesting. So kind of a shame it got shortened there. Also of note, Brett Moffitt changed his points back to Xfinity now. That's like the second time he's changed. He changed from Xfinity. He was Xfinity, changed over to truck. Now he's back to Xfinity points. Probably because his truck team has been running so much worse than his Xfinity team. So, yeah. So now Brett Moffitt, though, if he wants any kind of playoff hopes, he has to get a win. Um, which I would not put out a question. We get like a late caution and he plays the strategy right, or obviously any of the wild card tracks, like Daytona is kind of his last effort for the super speedways. Um, but road courses, he's been solid at least. So I would not put it out of the cards that he could get a win, but it was just interesting to see because you have to reset your points back to zero every time you do that. So he's back down to 0 points again, running for an Xfinity.
So do you not think then that like he can't go out and just dominate a race, or you think his only shot is to go out and kind of like grab one away, kind of illegitimately?
I think that uh, he could have a race where he's near the front, and then maybe we have a caution, or he pits, take tires, other guys don't, or reverse, something like that that helps him get that last bit of track position. I think that he could very well run in about fifth the whole race. I do not think they're quite good enough yet to run in the lead all race and just kind of dominate.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I think it's a car thing there too.
I think Brett Moffitt has all of the talent that he needs to win. I mean in my opinion, um, he's probably my favorite non-Cup driver, and I think he's criminally underrated, um, and he's kind of proven that over and over again, but yet struggles to get a ride from year to year. So it's cool that they picked him up for our motorsports, and he's run really well. Um, but yeah, they're gonna have to start knocking down really good finishes now to see if they can get their points up and maybe fight for a win. I'll be really rooting for it.
So we'll start to preview today's race. They're at Talladega Super Speedway. It's going to be 2 o'clock on Fox. Originally, I thought it was supposed to be 1:30. I don't know what happened to that, but I really dislike how NASCAR is moving around the start time based on where they are, and I assume they've only moved it up an hour because they're at Talladega, which is always a wreck fest, and Talladega doesn't have lights. So congratulations, NASCAR, for trying to get the Californians to like the sport, and they're never gonna.
um, Yeah, so the with Talladega, yeah, well, it'll definitely. It's funny because the Cup guys anymore, they seem to wreck more than the other um, two series. But I do think too that,
Yeah, which people should have less talent than the Cup guys, by the
well,
way.
yeah, I think that one element of it is that there's a lot less drivers in the Xfinity and Cup and truck garages that are going to try stuff and be really aggressive. Whereas in Cup, I would fairly say that like 30 drivers are going to actually be actively going after it. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely, for sure. Well, these guys can kind of afford to junk a race car or just see what happens. Whereas if you're in the Xfinity or in the trucks, you kind of only have a couple race cars to your
Right.
to your name. And not to mention that in the Cup, when you go to like a plate race, like usually nowadays, anybody has a shot at winning. So even guys like JTG Daughtry, or Roush Fenway Racing, those guys have a chance to win. So they could be in the top 20 making moves to try and win. Whereas at any other track, they won't even be close. And you can't say the same for Xfinity and trucks all the time either, because the dominant teams in those series are just so much more dominant than everyone else. Everyone else is kind of just there like, I'm here to take advantage if the big teams wreck. Whereas in the Cup, it's like I can win even if the big teams don't wreck.
Well, I will say though that there's been plenty of underdog victories. I'd say more on the truck side than the Xfinity side. Xfinity side, that's happened, but not as often. I mean, like in trucks, I mean, you had Parker Kligerman won with the Food Country 75 truck a few years ago. John King won at Daytona, who was a nobody, and I don't even know if he raced after that. A few years back, Michael Waltrip won after he was long retired from other forms of racing.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. It's like they're a lot more few and far in between is when these underdog teams go out and really win or have a shot at winning in the lower divisions. Whereas in the Cup, it's like anyone in the top 30 in owners points can go out and win.
Yeah, I will say that the underdog victories, I think actually happen more often in the trucks that like actually do happen. Even though I'd say that the Cup guys are more active, I think the trucks end up being more, or it happens more. I think that maybe that's
Oh,
because
completely.
of, well, the big guys in the trucks probably make more mistakes than the big guys in the Cup.
Yeah, well, they're younger. That's just what's going to happen, and not to mention, that the good guys can be taken out by less experienced guys in trucks who have shitty equipment, but the bad guys are in the back.
Yeah. So for fantasy this week, I will turn my screen on real quick, and for all the super speedways, Daytona, Talladega, I literally pick my team with a random number generator. I set it from 1 to 99, and I just click away until I get drivers who are, believable at least. So these are the guys I came up with. I came up with Bubba Wallace, Eric Jones, Cole Custer, Kevin Harvick, Chris Buescher, and in my garage is Tyler Reddick. So I got them in that order. Race winner was Kevin Harvick. That was also randomly picked. William Byron, and then the rest I picked. William Byron, top Chevrolet, top Ford, Kevin Harvick, top Toyota, Denny Hamlin, winning manufacturer Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports. Really, any of those guys are believable. I mean, they've all, at some point, I think the least successful out of all those is probably Cole Custer in that. But I mean, really, I mean, cards play his way. He can win just as likely as the rest of them.
It's also kind of interesting too how most of the guys you picked on your team, you've either not used them at all or used them only once. Kevin Harvick is the rare exception,
Yep.
where you've used him 3 times so far. So, um, pretty interesting to see that that random number generator did that. But a good pick though.
And I'm glad of that because I would I'm hoping honestly that Tyler Reddick does better than Harvick so that I can put him in and not have to use Harvick again. Because the super speedways are a good opportunity to use guys you wouldn't normally use, so you can save the really good guys for other tracks.
Yep. So my team, I kind of did what you did, and didn't do what you did in terms of like underdogs or people I haven't used at all. I tried to pick people I hadn't used. So I got Blaney, Keselowski, DiBenedetto, Almirola, Stenhouse, and Busher. I've used all of them only once, except for Stenhouse, Keselowski, and Blaney. Um, so those guys, underdogs like the last four, but Keselowski and Blaney could easily win any week. But they're really good at Talladega, so we'll try go with them. And then for my bonus picks, I have Logano winning, Chase Elliott is your top Chevrolet, Blaney is the top Ford, Hamlin is the top Toyota. Pick Chevrolet for winning manufacturer as always, and then I picked Hendrick as well.
Yeah, hopefully I can bounce back. I haven't been the greatest this season, so hopefully I can do better there.
You haven't been the greatest, but you are in second place.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty close between the group, the four of us or however many are.
Yep.
So we'll move on to I want you to talk about this mostly is the F1 race at Imola, right?
Yeah, they're at Imola. I mean, you watched it too, so you at least know everything that happened. But I did it live, of course, as Bill O'Reilly would say. Um, so Lewis Hamilton got the pole, I believe, and then Max Verstappen was second, and Sergio Perez was third, I believe.
I think Verstappen got the pole.
Did
I
he?
think.
I can't remember. I don't know. Anyways, Verstappen and Hamilton raced down into turn one, and then Verstappen kind of like put Hamilton off the track, so he had to go over those like sausage curbs on the inside or whatever. And I see that. I'm interested to hear your take on it because I feel like if you're going too wide in there, Lewis left Max enough room on the inside so he didn't go off the track. But then Max ran all the way wide and pushed Lewis off the track when like their front wheels were even. You know what I mean? I see that as kind of dirty racing. I understand it's Formula One and you got to do what you got to do, but I don't see that as fair.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so much of that like in
But
Formula
the
One.
FIA is just okay with it.
I I can't stand the FIA. I hate how that's probably like one of my biggest turnoffs of racing like this is just how political it is. Like I just wish the stewards and the FIA would just kind of get out of it a little bit. At times that's kind of a reason. Like NASCAR does plenty of officiating, and we don't always like the calls, but they are way more lax compared to the FIA.
Well, NASCAR also has rules of like, well, if you go through the pit road but you speed by zero point 0.1 miles an hour, you can do this, this, or this, but you didn't do any, so we're going to penalize you an entire race.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. To be honest with you, like I'm such a casual F1 fan. I don't know. I won't say I don't care, but it's just some. I guess if they did what they weren't like that, then it would make me more engaged with it. But since they are such a force, I just kind of go, whatever. I guess I don't care enough about it to really want it to change, even though I do want it to change. If that makes sense.
No, I understand. It's not worth your time, effort, or energy to really give more than a quarter of a shit.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, Max Verstappen got into the lead by probably a couple seconds, and Sergio Perez was kind of fighting up in there, doing well. They made a pit stop, and Max Verstappen came out. He was still ahead of Lewis, and then but it started to, it had been raining. The rain was stopping, so parts of the track were damper than others, and Lewis just got a bit overzealous trying to pass some lapped car that didn't really move out of the way in the best way possible, and Lewis just went skating off the track. And I was dying laughing because, like, you don't see this happen all the time. So I was like, oh man, this is crazy. Like, Lewis Hamilton just went off the track. Sebastian Vettel-esque. But, like, Hamilton doesn't make mistakes. Like, he is 90%, 99% of the time, he is perfect. And then he tried to turn around, and the turning radius wasn't there, and he did not have enough room. So he just hit the wall with his front wing, and he damaged it, like, really bad. And I was just dying. You hate to see it for him. But, like, it just, like, how funny is that?
Yeah. The What I really dislike though is like how he was able to like have all that drama and he still finished second. Like that I
Well, here's more of the bullshit of the FIA situation. So at that same exact time, Lewis's teammate and best friend who likes to see Lewis win all the time, every time, Valtteri Bottas, qualified like eighth. He was fighting for P9 with the likes of George Russell. To put emphasis on that, George Russell is driving a Williams and really badly wants Valtteri's seat So that should tell you just what's going through both of their heads right now. They go down the front stretch. George has DRS. Valtteri doesn't, obviously. Valtteri goes into turn one on the left side. It's a left hand corner, turn one at Imola, and George has DRS, so he goes on the right. Valtteri in the braking zone moves once to try and like give George exactly one lane of room to the right side of his car. And I haven't looked at it again or close enough to know for sure, but I'm pretty sure George had more than enough room. But he just barely got his tires on the right side of the track, off in the grass, and then spun into Valtteri, and then they both went into the gravel pit and they brought out a red flag because there was just car parts were everywhere. Shit went flying. The track was covered in carbon fibre. It was just all over. So I had to red flag it, which gave Lewis the opportunity to come back and get his stuff fixed, obviously under that caution or whatever. And then the FIA decided that all the cars that were one lap down would pass the leader and do a lap before they went green so they'd all get their lap back, which bullshit. Like, they were slow enough to have lost that lap. They should not get it back. What are you doing, FIA? That is the stupidest rule I've ever heard. I don't know why they did that. I think they did it for Hamilton. I'm sure there's some BS rule written in their, like Wikipedia looking rule book or whatever, or dictionary, sorry, to say that, that's what happens and that's just what they do. But I can't remember them doing that ever. Just to give everyone a lap down their lap back? Like, who does that? Why would you do that ever? That just seems really stupid unless there was a scoring error. But yeah, I didn't like that. That's why Hamilton was able to even recover from that spin because he should have been a lap down. He should have had no business even getting points that day. But the FIA really likes Lewis, I guess. So he got his lap back, and then he was able to claw his way through the field, which really tells you the difference between, I don't know if it's how Lewis likes his cars or, how well Lewis does in dirty air, but he was able to just slice and dice his way up through the field in like the last 30 or 50 laps to go from like P10 to P2. So that was pretty impressive. Sergio Perez also spun out in that last green flag run, and he just did awful. I don't think he scored any points, to be honest. He was like third or fifth, and then he
Yeah.
spun out and he was 15th. He passed a couple cars because like they're just trash cars, but he wasn't passing more because he was on the soft compounded tires, and you really needed to have clean air. And even if you did have clean air, the medium compound tires were better at the end because that's how Lewis got around Lando. But it's cool to see Lando on the podium again. Nice to see someone not named Lewis Hamilton win a Grand Prix. But the point standings, there's 1 point separating Lewis and Max now, and that's because Lewis got the fastest lap on like the last or second to last lap at Imola.
Yeah, Sergio Perez did end up 11th just out of the points. Yeah, to me, yes, Lewis is really good, but to me that's infuriating. Like he's just like they're all professionals, and he is so much faster than everybody else. It's like it's not. I I just
I
can't.
feel like it's his talent coupled with the Mercedes car.
Oh yeah,
I feel like Max Verstappen could do the exact same thing. I mean, like we saw at the Sakir Grand Prix with George Russell. George Russell was putting a whooping on the field like he was Lewis Hamilton. So I just feel like it's his talent coupled with the car. I feel like if you put George in that car, it'd be like Nico Rosberg or something, or even Max Verstappen. I think Max Verstappen's got more talent than Lewis,
yep,
but he's gonna stick with Red Bull.
yeah, and I don't know. I almost want him to stay with Red Bull to just be like
I would
defiant to
prefer he
Mercedes.
did.
You know?
I'd prefer he did. I don't know if Mercedes even wants him.
Yeah, probably not. They'll probably just continue to have somebody worse than Lewis in that second seat just to, um, you know, keep it that way until Lewis decides to retire, and then what?
I don't know, either that or they put George in the seat to force Lewis into retirement, and then they put somebody slightly worse than George in
Yeah.
the second seat.
Yeah, so I was happy that Verstappen won, and that Lewis didn't. Um, but
And the
I
Ferraris were doing well too.
yeah,
The
fourth and
Ferraris
fifth.
finished fourth and fifth, I believe, with
Yep,
Leclerc and Sainz. So that was awesome to see them up there fighting for decent points again.
yep, that was good. Granted, they were, pretty far behind the winner, obviously, but at least in the mix and
Well,
in the
everyone
points.
was behind Verstappen, and he's just, I mean, he's Verstappen. And
Yeah,
he's in a Red Bull too. Red Bull is just behind Mercedes, I believe, in car development and car speed. So, of course, he's gonna get a huge lead.
All right, so we have gotten through at least majority of the real racing news. We will transition to the iRacing news and give me a moment to pull up some of the results. You can get going on talking about NIS if you wish. Now I
So
can't.
NIF, we did. This will be covering Richmond and Talladega.
Yep.
Um, for Richmond, I can't remember. Were the trucks was Road to Pro at Richmond too?
Well, that was a few weeks ago, and yes, they were.
But
Yes,
you know what? But we went over that before, I believe.
I think we. I think it's hard to remember.
Um, but yeah, so Richmond and Road to, or sorry, not Road to Pro. I think
Well, if we want,
they
we can
fixed.
talk about Road to Pro real quick. Um, if you
No,
don't,
we'll get there when we get there.
okay.
We got to go in chronological order, Kenny. Come on.
Well, chronological order would put Road to Pro first.
Wasn't it Richmond, and we already covered Richmond though?
Uh, well, we didn't cover Richmond at. I don't know. We didn't cover Richmond NIS, so looks like
No,
the
that's
Road
what
to
I'm
Pro
saying.
was on the 8th, and Richmond was on, and NIS was on the 14th. So yeah, maybe you are right.
Yeah, so we already did Richmond Road to Pro, but Richmond A fixed, or NIS, excuse me. You qualified. You put her on pole. Great
Yeah,
job. We made a new friend and a new enemy.
yeah. So I finally got the results pulled up. So qualified on pole, the first pole win I've ever gotten in NIS, and the guy we were number 7, just to give a little bit of context to it. And we led the first like 17 laps, and then we had a restart, and this guy, Tom Laneville, passed me, and he was really aggressive on the restart, and I lost a couple spots. Then we had a decently long green flag run, and I got back around those guys and got up to second. And really, we just kind of rode around in second the rest of the race, and we had a bunch of restarts at the end. We had a total of 17 cautions, which was infuriating. Um, but if we would have had a long green flag run, I think we had something for the leader, but never really got that, so he just kind of settled in, and we just kind of rode to second place, but it was another good solid run.
Yeah, we really needed the green flag laps to go catch him. I feel like he was burning up his stuff a lot faster than we were, and there was a caution like every 2 or 3 laps, and we couldn't do anything because he had track position.
I mean, put it this way, even with all those short runs, with that not being our strong suit, our average lap time was only 1/1000th slower than his. So I guarantee we would have had more laps better than him if we would have run long green flag runs. Because we did have a few decently long runs, and you could see we were running them down, and then we get a caution. So just kind of didn't work out. Also, we pitted around like halfway, which was a 200 lap race, and he and I, the two car and us, we were the same. We same strategy. We pitted at the same time, and we stayed out the rest of the race. We were the only ones who did not come in and pit again. So I thought that was pretty impressive by both of us. But really, with us having such short runs, the tires have decent grip for a few laps. So, if we're just gonna have these short runs, eventually we just kind of made our bed and rode with it, and it worked out.
Yep, he drove a really good race. Just unfortunate there were so many cautions, and they were all like just dudes driving over their head and plowing in the corners and taking somebody out. So you'll have that on your bigger jobs.
For sure. So we'll move on to an NIS and Road to Pro in at Talladega this week. So first we ran on Wednesday for the NIS race, and I decided to run conservatively, run at the back, and I learned very quickly that with this new aero package in NIS or in the Cup cars in iRacing, that you cannot lose the draft, and because of that, you have to run aggressively. And I ran passively, and on a restart, didn't get a great jump, and I was like the last car in the group and lost the draft. But I was doing okay um, until we came in and pitted and under a caution, and my screen froze. And I had to back out of the sim, go back in, and by then I lost a lap. And my screen froze probably because my computer was trying to download an update in the background, or because I had my computer turned on Wi-Fi, not direct connection at the time, by accident. So we came back out. We lost one lap, but they were coming around to take the green, and I was hustling trying to catch them, and I did not catch the group in time. And then of course we ended up uh, running around for a while, and I ended up getting lapped another time, and then I ended up just caught 2 laps down and never got back up there. So we ended up P28. So that was really frustrating and a bad championship points day for that day. I only had 3 cautions that whole race, so that was a rough start. And then we ran Road to Pro on Thursday at Talladega, which that's kind of scary because that's a crapshoot. And obviously, I just wanted to run all the Road to Pro races this year just to say we did them and see where we stacked up. It has been a terrible, terrible season in Road to Pro. We got a top 10 at Richmond, and that's it. We got like what, ninth, I think it was. The other races have been awful. Like we've been fast, but they've had terrible finishes. So in this one again, I tried to run in the back, and then on a restart, lost the draft, and I just never got it back. And then we got lapped once, and then we were in the pack trying to. We got a caution, but I wasn't the lucky dog, so there was multiple drivers 1 lap down. So we were trying to race with them, and got everybody was in a group, and I was trying to be aggressive to stay the lucky dog spot, and then guys wrecked in front of me, and I couldn't avoid it. Got some right front damage, and then just limped home to a 24th place finish. So again, being passive did not work. And then finally, we ran NIS yesterday a second time. Obviously, with Road to Pro, you only have one chance. So NIS, you have multiple chances, and we decided to run on Saturday, and I decided to run aggressively this time. I wanted to qualify, run up in the front all day long, and it worked out. We only had 2 cautions. It was actually a really good race. However, this is kind of what set the tone for the end of the race, too. So we were riding around mid-pack probably because I still wanted to pit anytime we got a caution for fuel. I was just trying to get back up towards the front. We were in mid-pack, and a wreck happened in front of us, and we checked up. It was on the back stretch, and there was no caution. Everybody was kind of off the track, but it really still should have been a caution. So we checked up, and that spread the pack out. Just a few guys up in front, and then a decent-sized group where I was. Well, we all got organized, and we ran down the leaders and caught up to them, and then we got to one big pack, and then we had to make green flag pit stops. And we pitted, like, since I topped off with fuel and a caution before, we pitted in the last group, and us in the last group, we stayed the most organized out of everybody because we came out, we were in the lead by a couple seconds, 2-3 seconds, and the second group was trying to catch us. They were kind of getting to us, and then I think there was like a bump draft gone wrong, and that screwed them all up, and they lost all their momentum, and they never got it back. So we were like 6 seconds ahead of the group behind us, and we were 5 cars, and we literally just rode around on the bottom in a line until we got basically 1 to go. And I'm really proud of everybody in that group for not being stupid and just, waiting until the end, and then we'll fight it out amongst ourselves. And that's exactly what happened. And I think with like 2 to go, actually, we made a move past the guy that was in the lead, so we got to third. And then the guy in third made another move, or a guy in second made another move past another guy, so I was now in second. And at the end, I tried to rear up and get back to the guy behind me and get a good run at the end, but didn't quite play out. But we did get second place, which is a huge run, made up for all the iRating I lost this week and then some. So now we got our iRating into the 3900s for the first time. And yeah, so I guess I'm going to have to just run aggressively until that doesn't work out, because that was a That was a really good race. I can't complain. That went very well, and I did lead one lap, by the way.
Hey, I wish we got extra points in that. That'd be cool for you to have to do that, add some more strategy to it.
Yeah, for sure. That would have been nice, but it's okay. Like I did notice a few kind of cool statistics that out of the top drivers in NIS second division, I'm the first. Well, it's kind of a bad stat actually. I'm the first driver to not have a victory. Um, the top six cars have victories except for me. We're second in the standings, and I might have led the least amount of laps out of the group as well. Um, and then also we have the highest safety rating out of everybody in the top 25, which is pretty cool. We're at the max safety at a 4.99, so I'm pretty proud of that because that's a max safety rating in Class A. But yeah, the point leader has 2 wins, 6 top 5s. We have 0 wins, 3 top 5s. But he's had 5 more starts than us. We've had 12 starts. He's had 17. And you have to go back to 7th place for another driver with 12 or less starts. So I'm proud of how we've run this year. I hope we can improve on that. 31 laps led, by the way, so far.
Honestly, yeah, a couple stats to be proud of though too, especially given how often you run that and you don't really practice for these races. So um, I think you should be proud of those.
Yeah, hugely. And I get in and I try to get in if I can get in right when registration opens, so I can at least have a half hour practice. But there's been a few weeks this year, like when back before the time change, when I would run Wednesday, and I would get home from work like right when the race was starting, so I had no practice. So like Homestead was one of them. There's a couple others in there, and we just ran smart races. Anyways, I'm out of breath. You talk for a while.
Yeah, so GTRL, we went to geez, I forget the name of the track. Let me look actually. But regardless, it was a pretty good race. Jason and I were kind of, the leaders in practice. I had to learn the track. That's right. We were at Twin Ring Motegi, and I bought the track the morning of the race. I had not practiced it whatsoever, so I only had the 20 or 30 minutes of practice we had. I know as the race was going on, I was putting together some really, really fast lap times, and I was already in the lead of the standings for practice times. And I came out and I beat my previous best lap by like a second or something. So on the front stretch, I just kind of like tapped the brakes to slow down because I didn't want anyone else to know you could even go that fast. So they would stop pushing. And then a couple laps later, Jason probably was like 2 or 3 tenths off that lap, but still like a couple tenths better than my best lap. So that was interesting. I just thought it was funny that I had done that at all. And then in qualifying, I came out and on my warm up lap, I spun. And so that was pretty stupid, and then I had to do another warm up lap. I did a banker lap like I normally do, and then I was putting together a really, really good lap time, like pull for sure. And then in the last 2 corners, I went off the track just because I carried too much speed. So I backed up and then I went again. Thankfully, my last lap was good enough to take pole by probably a tenth or two over Jason. Um, and going into turn one on the initial start of the race, I don't know if the track was cold or brakes and tires are too cold or track was dirty or what, but I just went right off the track, just right off the track off turn one. And I got passed by everybody. There was only like 7 cars, maybe 8 in the race, but I got passed by everyone, did a sick drift, kept the car off the wall, and then just got back after it. I think that same lap, Lowell made a mistake and I got past him. And I don't know if Ryan made a mistake, but I did pass him as well. And then I think Brennan Myers was also there. He was third place then, pretty strong fourth place car overall. Um, he spun, got a little bit loose, and I passed him, and then I caught up to Brian and not Brian, Jason and Ben by like a second a lap or something, and then I was just kind of like on their tails um, as they were fighting and kind of just following each other, and then the lap that I was actually like gonna make a move on Ben. Um, Jason spun out. So Ben and I got by him. And I guess Ben was a lot faster there if he was following the car ahead of him, because as soon as Ben was the leader, we slowed down by like a good 6 or 7 tenths a lap, maybe even more, maybe an entire second based on the kind of times we've been running before. So as I was following Ben, Jason was catching up to us. And the lap where I was like, you know what, whatever happens this time, if I get a run on Ben, I'm taking it for sure. And I'm just gonna like make it too wide on him. Wherever it happens, it happens. And he made a mistake going underneath the bridge. He just went kind of wide, and I passed him. And I started probably pulling away by a pretty good, decent amount of time per lap. And then pit stops came, and I hadn't practiced pit road entry. I saw Ben do it in practice, when I was riding along with him, and boy, is it a tricky pit road. Like I could have put myself in the fence. So, but anyways, took enough fuel in one, so that was pretty neat. Still disappointed in myself for going off track at turn one, but we recovered, so that's all that matters. I now have 6 wins in the series, so I take my current record and move it further up. I think I probably have the most back-to-back wins in this series. I'm not too sure, but most importantly, Matt wasn't there again, fortunately or unfortunately. Um, so we now have 2 races over our closest competition, and we've only done 17 races so far. So championship's winding down.
Yep, pretty much got a stranglehold on that one. I'm the way I'm thinking is like if if the oval stuff doesn't work out this season when we're not able to get a championship for you, like you'll definitely get this one and have a BRL championship to your name regardless.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident though, and I don't even think I'm out of it in the Grand National Series. I mean, James could just as easily have a race like this, or God forbid something happens and he needs to miss a race, and same thing could happen for me or anyone else. So we're still in it. We're not going to give up. Definitely not going to miss a race this season. Next season is different. If something comes up, I'll definitely, by all means, um, miss a week or whatever. But this season, I think we're still going to keep our foot to the floor.
For sure. So we can move on to the BRL. You guys ran last week as well, right?
Yeah, so we had North Wilkesboro. Not, I think I was pretty good there, but it wasn't one of my best tracks, and JR went over it with me really well. So I kind of knew where to go for sure instead of just where I thought I should go. I was able to ask him some questions, and then you helped me as well with that, and Five Flags. You helped me with Five Flags, probably the same amount. JR usually helps me if I ask questions, and help me at North Wilkesboro, just knowing for sure, like you run this line and it's the fastest, whereas before it's like I'm pretty sure this line is the fastest. So we'll start with the street stock. So I actually pulled up all of the results. So I took a page from your book and I pulled them all up.
Awesome.
In the At North Wilkesboro, I started eighth. JR started sixth. JR won the race. Justin Morton started second. Kurt started on the pole, but I think within like the first 2 laps or something, Justin had passed Kurt around the outside just by pinching him. And you can kind of make the outside work if you know what you're doing. So Justin took the lead. He led 22 laps, and then JR caught up to him and passed him. We only had a single caution. Um, and I believe the caution happened just after JR passed Justin, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, so JR won that. Justin was second. Jason was third. I was fourth, and James was fifth. Kurt Smith was sixth, followed by Jeffrey, and then Donnie running at the top 8.
Yeah, and real quick in that series, well, I suppose we can talk about Five Flags first, but point standings after Five Flags is really, really tightened up. I want to hit on that before we move on to the next part of BRL.
Well, so I was going to move on to the tour mod race at North Wilkesboro. So would you rather do that or just do both the street stock stuff?
Maybe what we can do is go through all of the races first, and then go through all of the point standings second.
All right, so then we'll move on to the tour modifieds at North Wilkesboro. You want that or you want street stocks?
No, yeah, you can go in chronological order, so all
Okay,
of North
so
Wilkesboro.
for my race, Todd Liston started on the pole. Kurt Smith started second. I started third. And then Joe Segala started fourth. The race starts. Todd gets a pretty good jump on Kurt. Kurt doesn't get the best starts, but not bad by any means. I managed to kind of sneak underneath Kurt and pass him on the inside. And then JR had to fight off Kurt. And then I believe Kurt got a little bit loose. Maybe he might have clipped the grass racing somebody, but he got sideways and just wrecked the field behind us just because it's such a narrow track and there's nowhere for you to go at the drop of a needle or whatever. Um, at North Wilkesboro in those cars. So big pileup behind us. Luckily, I don't think too many people got damaged, and we only had a couple cautions. So if you need to use your fast repair, it wasn't a bad time for it. And then I was second, and Todd was first, and JR was third, I believe. So we had one more caution after that. I forget what it was, but basically same thing happened. Todd got a good restart. I got an okay restart and was able to get down in front of JR. And then I was just following Todd for the first 40 laps, just looking, seeing where I was faster, seeing what my exit was like versus his, and mid corner speed, corner entry speed to see where I could do something. And I had JR on me, so I figured like, I could let JR by and he'll pass Todd and then I can pass Todd because JR is going to pass me regardless. He's either going to let me do his dirty work for him and pass Todd, or he's just going to pass me and then pass Todd, and then I can pass Todd with JR. I figured it was just done and dusted. JR was going to have me like white on rice, man. Like he was just going to pass us. So I finally started realizing I could get off the corner straighter and faster than Todd. And I noticed Todd was kind of getting further out towards the wall, putting the power down. Just the tires were not responsive. Um, and he just went out and he hit the fence pretty hard. And then I went on the inside and I passed him. Luckily for me, um, Todd was kind of forced to let me by based on speed alone after he hit the wall, but he fought with JR for a couple laps, and JR had to kind of burn up his stuff more than I know he wanted to, and I was able to get like a probably a half a second lead, maybe three-quarters of a second lead on JR, and then after that I was just kind of like, all right, well, JR is going to catch me eventually, but I'm not going to make it easy on him. I'm just, try and take care of my tires and see what I can do, and then I was just riding at a normal pace, and JR was just like falling back. So I don't know if JR was letting it happen or he was saving his tires because he knew we'd get a caution. That's pretty much his only hope because track position and passing in those cars is so tough. Once you get that kind of like air bubble, it's hard to do anything when that's there. So I was just taking care of my tires, and JR kept falling back and falling back and falling back. Um, And then, laps were winding down. I got 10 to go from my spotter. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I can't wait for this to end, but I know there's going to be a caution. I just know it. But hope there is 10 laps to go. Cool. Come by again. 9 laps. Count down in my head. 9 laps, 8 laps to go. Coming around to get 7 to go, there was a caution. I was livid. Like when Chad Knaus goes, Earl, what the fuck's the caution for? That was me. To me in my own head. I was livid because like that, now JR is behind me. Somehow James had recovered from someone else's incident early on. He got caught up in an incident in the Tour Mod race, and he had gone from like 10th to now like third or fourth or something. Um, just what an incredible drive by him to get back up there. So I figured I was just dusted. Um, and luckily we had like a green white checkered or something, and I got a pretty good restart over JR. He was able to slot in behind me in front of James, and I think with like 1 to go or something before we'd done like 2 laps, there was another caution, so the race ended under yellow, and we won it. So that was pretty awesome to win at North Wilkesboro because it's such a cool track and the history there. Even though it's not like real life, it's cool just to win at these cool tracks like Martinsville. The paperclip was cool, and in North Wilkesboro with all the history there is pretty neat. And to beat JR, I mean, I don't think I've ever won a race where JR finished second. And in fact, 2 of the races I've won in BRL, JR was not there. So it was pretty awesome to do that. And then on the cool down lap, um, he came up and he hit me on the rear end. So that was pretty cool. And I finally got to do a burnout. And I've never done a burnout in BRL competition because the cars are always like geared too poorly do an actual donut. Like in the street stocks, you can't do a burnout, and in the old SKs, like there was no way you were doing a burnout.
Well, that's the beauty of having a clutch. You can dump the clutch at least and force a burnout.
Well, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, it's the only way you can do it in like the street stocks, for example. But yeah, it was super cool that you were able to get up there, get that victory, and you know hold off Jr. And I guarantee Jr. was not just gonna sit back and just like let you win. He was definitely pushing it, and I think he's not perfect in those cars. I think you can definitely be faster than him at some tracks in those. But yeah, um,
I mean, I feel like the more we get better and I keep using what you and he teach me, I can get to closer to his level and contend more and more to fight with him on a regular basis, and that goes for everyone, maybe except Matt, but we'll get to that later.
for sure.
So then we go on to the Grand National race at North Wilkesboro. Like I said, JR helped me out a lot, making sure I knew what line to take and running the brake bias all night long. I was asking him for brake bias percentage, for that, and then what steering ratio he was running and what he liked to do there. So it was cool to get his input. And I will say I was usually pretty close to the brake bias he was running, just what I was most comfortable with. But then that extra, half a percent or 1% there was really what I think made us just quite a bit faster. But anyways, the order got messed up for the starting grid. I should have started second, but Lowell messed up the ordering somehow. So it when it like based off of last race's results, I believe. So I started sixth and JR started first. And of course, if JR and James start first and second, they're probably going to finish first and second. And Kenny, you were there sort of coaching and spotting for me. So I really appreciate that, helping me learn and get better.
Yeah, we kind of
Pretty,
got in our own bubble there at the end and was just kind of riding. Such a
I mean,
shame that we
pretty
weren't able to start second because if we would have been second, there's a good chance we could have maybe gotten the lead if we could have stayed on the quarter panel of whoever was in first. And at that point, sure, we didn't have the pace of like the top three or whatever, but we would have had the track position, and that would have helped us at least stay in the running a lot longer.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think at that point they would have had to burn their stuff up getting through the field. And in that car at that track, especially, I think I'm a lot closer to their pace than some other times. So I feel like we really would have had a shot at getting a lot better finish than fourth. But it is what it is. I feel like Todd's really fast, but he could have been burning up his stuff too, depending on how it was. So, and starting second, you can kind of try pinch the guy down and make him burn up his stuff too. So we'll see, but it's unfortunate, the what ifs of it all. And odds are Todd, I'm sure, probably would have made it single file, and I would have just had to follow him for a while before I could make a move because he's pretty fast in those cars and they're pretty loose there. And if anyone can drive a loose race car, it's Todd. So we'll see, but finished fourth, a pretty good run. And we were every time we had a green run, we were pretty much in our own bubble. I didn't want to push my stuff more than I needed to, and of course, if I pushed it too much, I could catch them. And I was catching them at the end of the first green flag run, just based on like I hadn't been pushing it. And I was running that consistent pace, and they're kind of wearing out their stuff. But they were catching lap cars too, so it's hard to say. But it is what it is.
Yeah, at the end, I think we had like a third place car. Just things kind of didn't fall our way as far as being in the right place at the right time and cautions falling when they did and things like that to really be able to clear and get, solidly get that third place. But I think we at least had a third place car at the end.
Yeah, and I will say too, some of those like it seemed like JR and James must have been like playing games versus like who is restart and win because there were two restarts especially where I was absolutely just screwed based on the kind of games they were playing on the front row.
Yeah, I think, usually JR won't play games unless he notices the guy in second's trying to play games. So, then I think so. I think they were trying to kind of get each other, and that kind of screws up everybody else behind
It's
them.
each of their prerogatives, so
Yeah,
I can understand why they do that.
yeah, it gets me frustrated. I'm a kind of guy. I run. I at least try to. I try to run constant, and then just I pick a time when I'm going to go and I go. I don't do any kind of try not to anyway. Try not to do any kind of checking up or altering lines or whatever. And on the outside, I try to just time it. I try to not go early. I try to just go right after, which usually probably makes me not get as good a restart as maybe I could if I was playing games. But I don't know. It's just not really in me. Um,
Not very sportsmanlike.
yeah, and once in a while I do get a good restart. I'm really good at getting up through the gears, which even if somebody beats me on the jump, that can sometimes get me to their outside anyways. Um, but really, what I look for is because I know that on restarts you're gonna have good grip for like a corner or two, even if it's later in the race, I look for a good run out of turn one and two. I know that if he's gonna clear me, I'll still be right behind him going into one and two. So if I'm second and I can be clear into second, I try to get a really good exit out of one and two and see if I can make a pass down into three and four. That's what I'm most likely do.
We'll move on to five flags in the street stocks. Um, so Donnie started first, Kurt started second, James started third, I started fourth, and then fifth was Jason. Matt Thunhorse started sixth, Ryan Seneker started seventh, and Stephen Hilbert started eighth. Um, I don't know if I would have had anything for James, but James definitely had the advantage starting on the inside. So I was just going to try to follow James if I could through because he really seemed like he knew what he was doing at five flags. So I was just going to try to see if I could learn anything for later. Obviously, I don't have anything for him. Um, but yeah, so we kind of broke away, and there were no cautions surprisingly. So the first like five or six cars broke away. Matt sort of broke away from that second pack and caught us, and he passed me. And then there was like a huge just scrap battle for third between Donnie, Jason, and I, and that was a lot of fun. Racing them, and it was clean. I know Jason spun Donnie with net code by about like 2 or 3 feet or something, like an insane amount of net code to turn Donnie sideways. So that was pretty insane. But yeah, Jason won. Matt was second. I was third. Donnie was fourth. Um, did I say James won or Jason won? I can't remember. Anyway, James won for sure. Jason was fifth. Kurt was sixth. Ruben was seventh, and Ryan Seneca was eighth. So they'll be on the front row for next week. And then, Kenny, to your point, the points battle is extremely close. Jason is in first with 148 points. Simon's second with 147. Donnie's in third with 144, and James is in fourth with 143. And even then, it's still close. Matt Thunhorst is fifth with 141 points. So it's an incredibly tight battle up there for that. And interestingly enough, Jason is the points leader, but he hasn't won a race. Everyone else in the top four has won a race, and Matt in fifth. I'm pretty sure a win is coming for him with how fast he is. Um, so that we'll see what happens. But yeah, super tight points battle.
Yeah, really anybody in the top six, I'd say, is well within reach in this. I mean, and really people below that even are still, with how early in the season it is. But I think,
Have a race, and them having a great race could
right.
easily bring them up to the top.
But I think the top six are the real players. Jason, you, Donnie, James, Matthew, and Kurt Smith. Kurt's sixth, and he's only 9 points back. So that's a. I hope that this battle stays close through the entire season because that this could be one of the closest battles in BRL history, um, with all these players. And like you said, I don't doubt Matthew getting a win. Jason very well could get a win with how much he's been up front. So yeah, I'm excited as like a kind of a fan to watch this. I might have to start spectating some of the street stock races and the tour mod races to see kind of the points implications. By
Yeah,
the
I would not bet against Jason getting a win. He certainly has the speed for it, and just that raw consistency that'll do it. And even Kurt's gotten so much better just this season alone. And last season he was a lot better than he was before. So he's also got a pretty good shot at if he has a decent weekend. Maybe we're all scrapping for the win and we all get wrecked or something. So don't count Kurt out for sure. Um, moving on to the SKs. Um, James James won that one, but we'll go ahead and give you the qualifying starting grid. I guess not qualifying. So Brendan Myers is first, Kurt was second, um, Johnny Moore was third, Jason was fourth, James started fifth. I started sixth. Bruce Pearson started seventh, and Ryan Seneker started eighth. Um, Pretty good race in that one too. No cautions again, so it was really about conserving tires and seeing who could get through the field the fastest. I tried to do the same thing as in the race before. Try to get down behind James and see if I could learn anything and follow him through when he was making his passes. Unfortunately, um, I, I'm not sure who got to my inside first, but I couldn't follow James as much as I'd wanted to, and he's just so good at five flags, making passes and just raw pace. So it was really hard to keep up with him, and he pulled away from pretty much all of us. And then we just had a a scrap battle for the points positions after that. Matt caught me pretty quick, and I was like, if you run me down that fast, I might, I'm not going to pull over for you, but if I think you're faster, I might try and see what I can learn from you and see if I can follow you up through the field. So James won, Matt was second, Jason was third, Jeffrey was fourth, I was fifth, Ryan was sixth. Bruce Pearson was seventh, and Joe Segala was eighth. So they'll be on the front row for next week's race in South Boston.
Yeah, so in the tours, by the way, not SKs, which you called them again.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Uh,
It's a habit.
it's worth noting that Matt Thunhorst missed multiple races to start the season, so he's going to be out of the points championship for that. But you are the point leader by 1 point with your one win. James is the only one with multiple wins, and by the way, in the street stocks, nobody has won more than once so far this season. James got 2 wins. He's in second, 1 point behind you, tied with Jason, who also still has 0 wins in that one, but he's been very consistent. And then Donnie is in fourth with 1 win, and so you're at 150 points. Donnie's at 144 points. That's 6 points between the top four. Going down the list, Jeffrey Harden has 138 points, 12 points back of you, and Kurt Smith, sixth at 136 points, 14 points back. And really, I think the last player is Joe Segala, 135 points, so 15 points back of you. Top seven, all really within reach if anybody has a bad race or an extra good race. Beyond that, everybody else has under 100 points, so I think those are pretty well set out. But yeah, it another really good points battle is shaping up.
So we'll go on to the Grand National race. Um, Starting field for this one is jumbled, so I'll have a hard time reading it. But Ryan Seneca started on the pole. Kurt Smith started second. Third starter was Jeffrey Harden. Donnie Moore started fourth. I was started fifth. Um, Justin Morton started sixth. James started seventh, and Ruben Altis started in eighth. Um, Ryan Seneca broke away, and there was a two wide battle for second between Jeffrey and Donnie in the first couple laps, and I could just see Jeffrey was having a hard time on his tires, and he had boxed us in. Um, and I just kind of figured it, if I could pass Jeffrey and make it three wide, I'd be on the bottom, so I could run away with it and go try challenge Ryan for the lead and just have that track position for later on, because I knew I need something to beat James and Justin later on in the race. And going on the backstretch, I thought Jeffrey had cleared Donnie, and he had, but going on the backstretch, Jeffrey got a bad enough run that I was able to get to his inside, and Donnie got around him. So heading into the corner, we were three wide, and I heard my spotter say three wide, so I knew the line on the inside was mine. And Jeffrey, in my opinion, he ran me off the track onto the apron. But Kenny and the broadcasters made the point that it was kind of too early to be making it three wide, and they're correct. I will give them that. It was probably too early to do some fuck shit like that, but I had the line, and I figured I had to go for it. So should I have done that? Probably not, but I did have the line, so we'll leave it at that. So that
Yeah.
put me back to like 20th place. Go ahead. Sorry, Kenny.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those deals where Jeffrey was really checking you guys all up, and we had James right behind us, and maybe I don't know, maybe even another car behind him, and everybody was really getting stacked up, and Jeffrey was just not making any progress. Like he was clearing and then not clearing, and then really should have made that pass happen like multiple times, and it just wasn't happening. So I can understand where some patience was being lost. Just it was kind of agonizing sitting there with nowhere to go. And
Well,
Jeff
and I
and
was worried too. I mean, James is so fast, and if anyone could make a move like that, it'd be James. So I didn't want for James to pass me, and then for whoever was behind James, even Justin at that point, to check up and just pass me too. So I was worried he wasn't. Obviously, James is smart enough to not do something dumb like that. But I have just, I don't know, kind of seeing red, I guess.
yeah, well, you live and learn, and but I was proud of our pace. But we can continue the rest of the race.
Yes, we were pretty much. I didn't know how much damage I had, but Kenny said my left front was pretty bad. Because of course, after we spun out, I got hit pretty hard by the cars behind us. We blocked the track with that wreck. That was a pretty bad. That was like Martinsville in like 2012. Um, Clint Boyer stuff with how bad the three of us had spun out and blocked the track. So I got nailed pretty good. I pit after everyone else pit, so I came out like 20th probably. And then just by virtue of starting on the inside twice, raced up through the field to ninth, and then there was a checkup ahead of me, and Lowell was like right on my ass, and he just spun us out onto the front stretch, and I got nailed again by somebody, and then someone else nailed me because the person behind them didn't check up at all, like just decided to put their foot down through the wreck. Um, so it is what it is. We got put to the back again. Car was damaged. Got it fixed a couple times to get the hood at least down so I could see everything again. Got up to 12th, and then coming off a caution, the caution had come out. I was on the outside of Steven, and he just kind of washed up a bit too far into us on our left rear and just spun us into the inside wall and killed the car. Blew the engine immediately, and that was day done.
Yeah, it was a pretty much frustrating race all the way around, and didn't get any better after our first incident. We had really good pace though. Um,
I mean, even with the wrecked car and getting spun out, we had really good pace. And then
yeah.
even after getting spun out twice, and then having a really wrecked car, we had good pace still.
So up front, Justin Morton ended up leading 60 laps, but could not hold off Matthew Thunhorst. I think Justin really pushed his tires too far, and he ended up second. Matthew Thunhorst gets his first BRL Grand National win in I believe his
In its
first
first
start.
start.
James Lowe, great recovery by James, getting in up into third after he got spun out.
James got spun out by
Yeah.
Matthew. He just washed up too far and just a racing deal. But I'm sure James was seeing red because like who goes to pass somebody and hits them out of the groove like that. But luckily James didn't hit anything, so he didn't even have to use his fast repair, and he was kind of back there in the eye of the storm, I guess.
Well, yeah, the
Us.
thing that kind of doesn't really sit well with me is like, we've all been there. Like, if you're in your first race in a league, in a series, whatever, that's the last thing you want to do is hit somebody or cause a wreck in your first start. You kind of want to just, I don't want to say just ride, but you want to be as safe as possible in your first ever race, and you
I mean, it's
really
like your
don't want to spin out a title contender too.
it's like your first day in anything like work or school or a class at school, like if you change class or even a college class or something, you just want to blend in. You don't want to make a scene. You don't want to do anything. And of course, obviously, Matt, you didn't mean to spin him. He's a lot cleaner racer than that, and he's shown that in the street stocks especially. So he didn't mean to, but yeah, just really bad rep or rap, I guess, to spin James, but unintentional, and he did apologize. But yeah, James said he was seeing red in his interview, and I know I would have too. But great recovery by him to go back up to the field to get third.
Yeah, and worth noting too, Steven Spies ended up coming up to fourth. So after the problems that we had with him, and starting 18th as well, ended up fourth, and Adam Shane ended up fifth after starting 19th. So huge races for them, and Mike Allen started dead last 20th and ended up eighth. So he managed to get to that pole spot and will be on the front row next week at South Boston. So that's huge for him because, and especially for him because I believe that's one of Mike Allen's favorite tracks. So I believe it's kind of local for him, South Boston. So he's going to be really wanting to get that victory, and also just track position wise because of how hard it is to pass there. So that's a win-win for Mike Allen going into next week.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen what would happen if James could have balloted out with Justin and Matthew there at the end, because James was really close to being 5 for 5 at 5 flags. That would have been a pretty cool thing to say, and just have that I don't know, just just like 5 for 5 at 5 flags would have been sick. And of course, he had dominated there all weekend. He was definitely the best car in the first 4 races, and he was still really fast in that race. So I would have liked to see him do it. I think he would have had something for sure for Justin, and it would have been a really tight battle with Matthew. So neat to see, but we'll never know.
So coming out of there, that one really jumbled up the points, and the Grand National Series is actually the least contested, at least for the moment. With James is solidly in the point lead at 20 points ahead of Ruben, who is 1 point ahead of you and Jason at 135 points apiece. Everybody beyond you guys is really close. I mean, from second at Ruben down to Kurt Smith and Jeffrey Harden and tied for sixth. So really, sixth and seventh. That's only 10 points. So it's really tight between all you guys. But James is, I don't want to say running away with it, but you guys really all took a hit for the dramas over the last few weeks. And James has had dramas himself, but has been able to recover really nicely and continue his good points days. So that's, I'm not saying it's over because we're not even halfway through the season yet, but he's got a really good, hard start to this season.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, going into it, you knew he was going to be the title favorite just because how fast he is and how consistent he is up at the front. And obviously, how many times he's won before and even won championships. So you knew he was going to be the favorite, obviously. Um, Not quite David and Goliath, but he was definitely the heavyweight contender for it, for all three, to be honest. So that, the fact that the other two are even as close as they are is a testament to just how kind of tightly contested they are. But obviously, Grand National, probably the hardest cars to drive, where you really need to save your tires, and it shows that he's got a 20-point lead over the guy in second. So we'll see what happens.
So we do have a little update on NEP, the NEP Endurance Series. We ran at Sebring, not this weekend, or not this week, but the week before, I believe it was. And this one, they got rid of the caution rule where a GT team could randomly throw a caution because it really screwed everybody up. We had 15 total cars. We had 6 in the Dallara, the LMP2 class, and then the rest were in the GT class, GTE. And we put it on pole. I was really proud of that because JR ran his qualifying lap for Team Uninstall the Game, and I laid down a banger of a lap. I'm really proud of it.
It's like a lap of the gods.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was half a second or something faster than everybody else. Um, so we put it on pole and we ran out to the front for a while, and then the problems arose when we caught lap traffic. And I know a lot of these guys in the GTEs are kind of beginner racers, but it's a little bit scary and a little bit frustrating in the LMP2 cars. Catching up to some guys. One driver kind of didn't spin us or anything. But he ran us off the track, and that really had JR catch back up to us, and he ended up passing us down the front stretch. But then right after that, he got a little bit wide out of coming out of the first sector, and it spun him out, and we got right back around him. So like, all right, cool. So we're back in the lead, and had a decent lead, and then we caught another lapper in the kind of S section before the backstretch, and he like went left, and we went right, and then he like locked up his brakes and spun us out, and that not only spun us out, but gave us damage. So JR ended up passing us, and we were just kind of trying to hold on until we could pit and make a driver change. And that was kind of the end of the race, really. We solidly got up to second and held it, but Team Uninstall the Game with Tim Shanowski and J.R. Shepard ended up winning. And I really feel like we could have won or at least been in a really close fight with Team Uninstall the Game had we not had the
not
problems
been
with the lap
spun
cars.
and wrecked. Yeah.
Yeah. But first and second as was our finishes so far, so we are points leaders. So we've been really good every week. So happy about that at least.
Yep. And next race is at Mid Ohio. I still have yet to practice there. I don't know if you've practiced there yet, Kenny.
Nope, I have not run a single race in iRacing at Mid Ohio. That race will be very tricky for the LMP2 cars, I have a feeling. So
It's going to be tricky for all of them. The LMP especially because it weighs so little.
yeah,
So in the middle of the corners, it's going to be really, really skatey.
yeah, it's going to want to get light in a lot of the elevation changes, and I think it's going to be hard to pass. I think really there's not going to be many chances to pass. I mean, like into the keyhole, and then the next corner after the keyhole down that long straightaway. I think that's going to be like really your only good passes, chances to make passes. Um,
And even with the GT cars, there's only like four good spots to pass, maybe five. The front stretch, the first turn, going into the keyhole, coming out of the keyhole before you hit the S's, and then maybe as you crest that hill out of the S's, excuse me, you might be able to eke to the inside or the outside or something if they're really nice. And then the back stretch is a pretty decently long straightaway, so you might be able to do something. But that carousel and entering the carousel is super tricky. So we'll have to see what happens there.
yeah, so it's I think with the the skill level of everybody, including us, even I think we're gonna be taking less chances. At least I hope. I know you and I will probably be pretty conservative. I know like we're sending it in this league, but with us not knowing a whole lot about this track and how to drive it, I think that's gonna a little bit play against us a little bit. But I think everybody's gonna be in a similar boat. I don't think many people are gonna practice a whole lot, so I think we're still gonna be just as fast as we normally are.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we put in like an hour or two of practice, we'll be okay, and still, decent speed wise. But I think the winner, and it sounds stupid to say this, but will be the person who goes off track the least, because I think everyone's going to go off track at one point, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair prediction for sure. So we'll move on to our favorite section of the day, and that's the Rusty's Retro Races. We've been a little bit on our podcast. Brian has been taking a few races off, or a few weeks off on um, the retro races, but he's back. Looks like this week. But he did run a race at Martinsville, and you have in our outline, right, who we've picked, correct? Okay, yes.
Yeah. So at Martinsville, I picked Terry Labonte, and you picked Richard Petty. Terry finished better than Richard, but I believe Brian won the race, and it is a shame we didn't pick Brian.
Yeah, so Terry ended up fifth, and Richard Petty ended up, looking down the order, 12th. Um, the thing is with, and I'll turn my screen on here. The thing is with the Martinsville, I don't know why, but the AI, they want to pit all the time. And so you look at the interval, only two cars on the lead lap, and everybody else's two laps or more down. It's kind of a shame because the track seems to race really nicely, but it just, um, like, it just, like it's not very fun when everybody's like pitting every other lap and everything. Um, so Bill Elliott ended up second. They were kind of flip flopping the lead a little bit. Brian wins. Brian's really good on the short track, so yeah, we probably should have picked him. I forgot that
In,
the
in
AI
my
is stupid here.
defense, he's always a late Martinsville winner, so I figured I'd save him for the next race.
That is true. We look statistically. If I can slide it over here, yeah, Brian won the 80 and 81 fall races. Didn't win in 82. So, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. But anyways, I mean, we can save Brian for another week. But he wins. Bill Elliott's second, Dick Brooks third. Good points day for Darrell Waltrip and Terry Labonte, fourth and fifth. Jimmy Means up in sixth, Jeffrey Bodine in seventh, Tommy Gale eighth, Neil Bonnet in ninth, Buddy Baker in 10th. Joe Ruttman finishes another race up in 11th. Some notables near the back, Dale Earnhardt 30th, crashing out. Harry Gant 27th. Dave Marcus didn't do well. Morgan Shepherd didn't do well. But again, only 32 cars in the field. Short track, shortened field. So that kind of plays into it. So yeah, so now we're going into Talladega is the next race, which fits along with the real life races. So I get to pick first for once, right?
Yeah, yep, yep.
And I will take a look here. Brian actually sent me some stuff. He said Richard Petty won in real life. Lake Speed finished third on that day. Joe Ruttman started second, finished 11th, 4 laps down with a blown engine. Morgan McClure ran their first race. That's the Morgan McClure team. Connie Saylor was the real driver. Mark Martin is the driver in simulation. Morgan Shepherd is driving the 2 car now. Phil Parsons had his really bad wreck in this race, failed to qualify in simulation. And it's also Brian's 100th race. And Kyle Petty's only win in simulation was winning from the pole in 1980, leading only 4 laps. Now, I know the simulation style is like, it's quite different from real life. It's kind of, um, pack racing. Everybody's really grouped together and everybody kind of flip flops positions constantly. Um, the favorites and sleepers. Lenny Pond actually has won twice and with 3 top 5s, which is kind of funny. I think he's only won maybe once in real life. Dave Marcus, 3 top 5s. Bill Elliott, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s. Sleepers, Kyle Petty has 1 win, 2 top 10s. Dick Brooks has 1 win, 2 top 10s. And in real life, his only win was at Talladega, I believe. And Dean Roper, who was the sleeper who ended up winning the Daytona 500, infuriatingly so, but he did so. In his first start, I believe it was. And past winners, Dick Brooks and Kyle Petty in 80. Dale Earnhardt and Lenny Pond in 81. Philip Duffy and Lenny Pond in 82. So it's pretty unpredictable. We have 8 drivers who didn't qualify. Connie Saylor didn't. Philip Duffy didn't, so he won't be winning. Rick Wilson didn't. AJ Foyt didn't make the field. That's a shame. Yep, and I was correct. Lenny Pond won once at Talladega in real life. Um, I don't think that was in the 80s as well. I'm not positive, though. Anyways, so looking at the qualifying order here, Brian actually put it on pole at a Bobby Allison, Dale Earnhardt, Buddy Baker up front, Darrell Waltrip, Kyle Petty's up near the front, but I mean the starting order doesn't matter a whole lot with it being Talladega. Dean Roper's in there in 11th. There's Mark Martin in the Morgan McClure car, so that'll be interesting to see how he does.
Yep. So Lenny Pond won the 1978 Talladega 500. So Brian was only
Gotcha.
off by 1 year.
Gotcha. Jeff Bodine's toward the back with Carol Yarborough, Joe Ruttman, Sterling Marlin's in there. There's Dick Brooks. Dave Marcus is towards the back. Morgan Shepherd now in that 2 car. Ken Reagan made the race. Bill Scott made the race. Lenny Pond barely made the race. So yeah, who am I gonna pick? I'm tempted to pick Dale Earnhardt, although he didn't win at all last season, I believe, in Brian's simulation, but anybody could win this, so I kind of want to pick an underdog because of that. I'm very tempted. And if we go back and look at our picks, and I picked Neil Bonnet, Darrell Waltrip, Sterling Marlin, Bill Elliott, Richard Petty. I'm gonna go and pick. I'm gonna pick Ron Bouchard, P10. He's solid. His only win in real life came as a rookie. I think that would have been 82, I believe, and it was at Talladega. So he's been consistent. I think he can get it done.
Okay, so interesting. I'm gonna go with Buddy Baker.
Good pick. Wood Brothers, huh? Starting
Yeah,
P4.
I feel like he's got a pretty good shot at it. I mean, I did just finish his model the other day, so I think he's got a pretty good shot at it. He's done well here on the super speedways. Before he qualified fourth, so I think he should do well.
Brian says that Ron Bouchard actually won in Talladega in '81. So we're both 1 year off. So yeah, so this one will be anybody's game. I'm excited to watch it. Hopefully, if there are any big ones, Brian gets through them. We'll look at the points real quick. So yeah, Darrell Waltrip still points leader, but it's pretty slim. It's actually not as slim as the points lead in real life at this time. Brian's up to 6th in points. That's good. Tied with Buddy Baker. Buddy's been good. Ron Bouchard 10th in points. Tim Richmond, I don't think he'll be driving, so he's out of the top 10. So, yeah, Harry Gant actually took the points lead over after the real race at Talladega. and Harry's nowhere to be found in the top 10. And Brian's thing, he's been having some bad luck. Seems like he's only good at a few tracks.
I think he's only good in the month of September, Kenny, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, Mr. September. So this will be fun. It'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch the real race as well. I've not heard my dad make any picks, so we'll see. We'll see if he comes back with a pick. We'll have to let you guys know because he seems
Well, he
to be
can
really
always
good at
text
those.
later, and odds are he'll pick the winner.
Probably, yeah, he probably will pick the winner. Um, so yeah, that'll be exciting to watch.
So we'll move on to the video game section. Kenny, I know you've been playing a lot more Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah, we got back into it. I finally got back into the story, and I'm like more invested in it again. There's like different territories in the game to take over, and then like or like actually you become an ally with them, and then you kind of use your allies for like towards the end of the game, end of the story, anyways. Um, and so I'm basically down to about like 1 to 2 territories left. I think one, and then I think what the game's gonna do is gonna send me back to like the first map at the beginning to conclude the story. But there's still a lot to do. There's a lot of loot I can do and side missions, but I think I'm gonna hold off on some of that at least. I'm only gonna do it, go after some of that stuff if it's close to where the main missions are. Um, and there's a part that takes place in Asgard, which is kind of the Norse mythology, kind of where all the gods live, kind of place, like kind of like a
Like where
heaven.
Thor comes from.
Yeah. So Um, there's a whole like kind of separate story over there. So I think after I finish the territory I'm on now, I'm gonna go over to there because my power level is high enough to be okay over there now. So I think I'm gonna do finish all of that, and then I'll go back and conclude the main story, and then there's DLC stuff supposed to come out in mid-May, so I think I'll be just on time to get after that stuff. There's so much content in Assassin's Creed anymore. It's pretty much never ending. Um, so it's been fun. I don't know if it's my favorite Assassin's Creed game to date, but it's quite good.
I've been playing a lot of Minecraft more with my cousins on our Bedrock. We got a realm together, so it's been a lot of fun. Been playing some GTA 5 with the boys from college and in Rainbow Six Siege. Um, so just just regular stuff. But I know you've been playing some MLB The Show 21.
Yeah, so MLB The Show 21 came out on April 20th, and it's the first MLB The Show game that's on Xbox. So downloaded it and just kind of get my feet wet in it. Went through some of the options and things. I haven't actually played a full-on game yet. I was kind of holding off on doing a franchise mode until some updated rosters come out. I may start a franchise anyways. May just go ahead with it, but I don't know. I like having the updated minor league rosters in there, and they're supposed to come out, probably within the next few weeks, I'm guessing. Um, and I tried to play Diamond Dynasty, and it like lagged out and didn't let me play it. So um, it kind of turned me off of playing it for a little bit. But yeah, I'll definitely get into it at some point. And I'd like to do a Tigers season. And Brian is in chat and says there's a bug in franchise I just heard about yesterday, so you need to wait to start one. So there you go. I guess I'm gonna wait to pull the trigger on that. Um, yeah, it's had its fair share of bugs. I went and tried to download a roster just to see what it looked like, just to kind of see what that's all about, and it actually kicked me out of the game. Wouldn't let me play it after that too. So it's been quite buggy. So I might be able to play like Road to the Show, although there's been bugs reported in that too, where like progression's not being tracked. That's where like you make a character and have like your own career as an individual. So I don't know. Um, is what it is, I guess. But that's the thing with pre-orders. A lot of times, sometimes they don't work very well right at the beginning of their release, and you have to kind of be patient with them. So we'll be patient with it. We got other stuff we can play for now, so we'll get to it eventually. So the rants and reviews section, I didn't know which one you'd prefer to do this
We'll
week.
go ahead and do the Premier League one, Kenny. You seem to be pretty hot under the collar.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if anybody in the chat knows or cares, but it's something I'm passionate about. So I have to put some context to this. So basically, in European soccer, there's kind of a pyramid system. So England has their pyramid of tiers of teams, and it goes all the way down to local teams, and basically like if you are like essentially if you finish in the top three in your division, well next year you get moved up a division, and that goes all the way up to the Premier League, which is England's top division. So in theory, you can have a team, a nobody team from some local village somewhere, who plays, and they could keep getting promoted all the way up to the Premier League. And that's kind of the beauty of, and that's the same in Italy, that's the same in Spain, it's the same in France, it's the same in Germany, all these big soccer countries. And that's kind of the beauty of England is like, or of European football is that there's you expect to see three new teams in the Premier League every single year, and sometimes it's always usually like returning teams, but it makes it fresh because you get three new teams in the league, and then the three bottom teams in the Premier League they go down a division every year. So it makes for variety. You get three new teams every single season, and it also makes for drama at the end of the year because you're like, okay, who's going to get promoted, who's going to get demoted, and who's going to win the championship. It's like three separate races all at the same time. So, with that in mind, there's a few teams like in all these leagues that are like the big boys. Like, you know, there's six really big teams in England, for example, and there's a few big teams in Spain and France and Germany and Italy. Well, 12 of these really big teams decided to come up with what's called the European Super League, and it's going to be 20 teams, and it's only meant for these big teams. So 12 of these teams, and they were announced right away, and it included the six big England teams, and a few teams from Spain, a few teams from Italy, but the German teams actually refused to go into this league, and so did the French teams, which was I applaud them for that. And so, like, these guys would break away. They'd break away out of their traditional country leagues and have a league on their own where they would, like, 15, I think, of the teams would be locked in every year. They would never get demoted. And then they'd have five teams in every that are different every year based on how they're performing, like domestically and internationally and stuff like that. So you would have that, but like these other teams would be locked in. Whereas in like the Premier League, it doesn't matter who you are. If you finish in the bottom three at the end of the year, you're demoted, no matter what. Um, and so it was basically just a big money grab because they're trying to advertise, oh, these big teams will be playing against each other every single week, which would get boring because you look forward to big teams playing against each other as kind of a holiday because they don't play against each other all the time. So you'd have the boringness of that along with the big money grab of these big teams just getting richer and kind of leaving the, I don't want to say poorer teams, but the smaller teams just left to die basically. And it would kill the pyramid that is European soccer. But the cool thing is, fans got together after they heard about this proposal and they protested, and everybody in the media hated on it, and there was so fierce of a opposition to it that they actually nearly all the teams pulled out of the idea already. So it is kind of worrisome that they tried this and that it may become a reality sometime, but it was cool that the opposition and the power of the fans was so great that they had to pull this idea out, at least for the time being. But so it's kind of a good ending to a bad story at the from the beginning. Um, but it was kind of a scary time in a sport that's the world's most popular sport and pretty much my favorite sport as far as stick and ball sports go. So, kind of a scary time this week. It was pretty much a roller coaster. All this stuff happened, like the announcement of the league and then the demise of the league, basically all happened within a week. So it's pretty crazy. So with rant over, I will turn it back to Austin for some modeling news.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like the idea of three teams getting promoted and demoted. I kind of wish they'd do that some with like the NFL or something. If they had that, like the two worst teams go to like the X NFL or whatever, the XFL, that'd be and the one dude, the best team from the XFL got promoted to the NFL. That'd be interesting. I wish they kind of did more of that here. But regardless, yeah, I've finished my Gray Ghost Buddy Baker car from 1980. Looks pretty good, a lot better than I thought it would look. I really messed up the tires trying to put like a matte clear on them, but it is what it is. Luckily, they all just I didn't have to glue them on. The car has like perfect ride height, just like box stock, so I didn't have to do any like weird stuff to like grind away the axle positions for the tires to go, and then kind of just haphazardly glue them on up in the wheel wells. It all fit together the way it should, so I can take all four of the wheels off whenever I want. And put them back on later after I fix them. There's no red stripe or orange stripe on the car. I figured it'd be too hard to paint it and follow the body lines twice. I did it once and I did a horrible job at following the body lines, but it looks decent enough from like a foot away or something. Um, and I didn't want to do the decal because those are so hard and you pretty much have to be perfect when you do those and make sure your line's painted perfect. And there just wasn't enough like room for error and tolerancing. So, but it looks decent enough. My next kit is going to be the 1982 Buick kit, Bobby Allison's Gatorade number 88 car, but I'm going to make it into the number 22 Miller High Life car.
Yeah, you're definitely knocking down all the iconic cars very rapidly, and this Gray Ghost car is one of the coolest. And yeah, it's these old models are just awesome, and
Yeah, I
they're
really
like,
like doing them a lot. This one took forever, probably the longest ever. My desk was kind of cleared up with space. We're doing some remodeling of the kitchen and stuff, so the house is kind of a mess to get to, and I couldn't paint for a couple days out in the garage.
yeah, but that was awesome though. Cool car for sure.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really like it. First time doing those like chrome reflective decals as big as they are, and they turned out pretty. And the chrome Salvino's uses is easy to work with because you don't have to worry about scraping it off. It just sucks when you don't want a part to be chrome. But yeah. Oh, Brian says he's not a fan of those Oldsmobiles. I kind of like them. There's some things I like about them and some things I don't, so I can understand why you wouldn't be. But yeah, and I'm still getting around to the new shelf above the TV for models. I haven't done that yet. I need to. Might do it today with my dad, but we'll see. And then vacation planning. We'll go to that next.
Yeah, and I think those Oldsmobiles, like, they're one of those cars that's like a cool ugly, in my opinion. I think if that
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out,
yeah. Cool,
if
ugly.
if that came out new, it'd be like, ugh. But now that
Yeah,
they're old, I think it's cool, just because it's
yeah.
old, you know.
No, for sure. Yeah, they're not the best looking car, but it's like the best kind of ugly. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yep. Um, anyways, yeah, vacation planning. I know you may be going to Road America,
Not maybe.
or
I think I'm already committed. I believe
cool.
we bought tickets as a friend group. All the boys from college and I are all pretty much committed to going there for the July 4th Cup race. We just have to iron out like who's driving and what hotel we're staying at when we're leaving. But we bought tickets for it, so we're for sure going.
No, we were planning. I mean, I've been sort of planning a vacation over to Wisconsin to see Brian, and Brian is not that far away from Road America. So
Is he not?
I don't know.
Because my college roommate freshman year, he married someone that lives like 5 minutes away from Road America, or lived there previously. Now they live here, but yeah. So her old house is like 5 minutes away from the track.
So yeah, so Brian's about 45 minutes away. So I still don't know when exactly I'm going over there, but yeah, that's tempting. We may have to see if we could go over there. That'd be an awesome experience if we
I
could do
I
that.
could ask if you can come with us. We're kind of the same way you introduced me to your friend group. These people know about you and Jeezy Squibbs, Kenny.
Of course. Well, the thing is, if I was gonna do this, it would basically be like while I'm hanging out with Brian, um, Brian and I would go to the race and
Right, or at
basically
least
meet
meet
up with
up
you
and play some
guys.
disc golf because
Yeah.
these people play disc golf as well.
And no, Brian says Road America has a disc golf course, best track
What?
ever.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah,
that
you're
is
telling me.
it is no longer the standard to have a Ferris wheel at the track, like what Ben says. You have to have a disc golf course. I'm
Yes.
marking that now. That's pretty cool, though. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that. But anyways, the other thing, not really a vacation, but for my mom's birthday, or birthday's on May 1st, we're gonna go to Berlin Raceway next Saturday for Kenny Wallace night. I guess he's showing up for a. I guess he's running like in a four-cylinder class. That's what I heard, anyways. We'll see, but yeah, Kenny Wall's gonna be there, and it's just gonna be like my parents have never been to Berlin. I think I'm gonna go, and my friends Brody and Justin may be going as well, so that'll be cool. Berlin's a really nice facility. It's a cool track, a lot of history, so it'll be cool to watch some racing. So yeah, that was a full episode. I'm sure there's some stuff we missed and didn't get to, but we're essentially caught up, at least close enough. Um, so yeah, Brody actually just showed up at my house, and we're gonna go discing. So, have any final lasting comments, Austin?
Nope. I mean, other than good luck.
All right, and good luck to Brian tonight as well, and if he
Yeah, good
runs
luck,
his
Brian.
Talladega race, and excited to watch the real Talladega race as well. So yeah, it's a good shaping up to be a good Sunday. So, anyways, thanks everybody for watching. Sorry again for missing last week with the podcast, but we caught up, and hopefully we will get back at it again next week. And yeah, thanks Austin again for being the co-host. Thanks to Brian and Jake and James who appeared in the chat today. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys next week. And have a good day and Godspeed.